Welcome back to FHIR in 5. We're up to the letter H for help. This is a continuation on the last post around G for getting started, but I thought one of the questions I do get asked is I've got some particular challenge with FHIR and I don't know where to go and find out some more information to get some assistance. So when I get asked these kinds of questions, you know, I've been using FHIR for a while, but I don't know how to, I don't understand how to map a certain part into a FHIR resource, or how do I do messaging based patterns with FHIR? I know it can be done, but I just don't know how to do it. Or I'm working on a specific FHIR project and I can't find where I'm supposed to put a certain field. Do I make an extension for this thing, or am I supposed to use one of the other existing fields within the FHIR specification? You know, what do other people do to solve that particular problem? Or the other common one I get is there a way of validating a FHIR resource, or is there a tool that I can use, an application I can use to do this part of FHIR in an easier way? Or, you know, what kinds of tools would you use to query a FHIR server just to get started? Or what libraries might exist so that I don't have to write things from scratch? So these are kind of common challenges that I hear a lot, and I'm sure you've heard them as well, or you've had these kinds of questions and just want to know where to go and get some more assistance. So first things first, start with the FHIR website. It's got references to most of the information you're going to need to get. And if it's not there, it'll have links through to where you can go and get extra information. I think I must go to the FHIR specification at least once a day to look for a certain part of the FHIR resource that I'm working on, or I'm interested in at that particular time. And yeah, it's a great wealth of knowledge. So use it. And don't forget about examples. We talked about in the getting started around the use of examples in FHIR. They're a great way of working out usage on some of the FHIR resources and what kinds of data you might want to put in a particular resource. The community forum in the chat is great for questions that people have asked before. So definitely first up, after you've signed up for an account on those particular services, is before you start posting, review other people's posts to see whether the question has been asked before. I've recently used, I think it might have been the chat to understand a particular challenge I was having with utilising the NZ Firebase in the IG publisher using FHIR shorthand. And before I posted, I decided to search for my particular challenge, and sure enough, someone had asked the same question. So I was able to leverage on that response. The chat and the community groups are very active. People will respond to your queries, but please search before you ask your question. The Confluence site, which is available there, has great set of documentation around things like the blogs that we talked about in the getting started. It's also got access to the various tools, whether it be the IG publisher, using FHIR shorthand, even some of the validation tools. You know, all of that wealth of knowledge that's been built over the years is available in Confluence, and certainly a go-to place. If it's not in the FHIR specification, it'll likely be in the Confluence pages, and it's being regularly updated. So definitely leverage that. The one great resource on there are the FHIR cheat sheets. It's a one-pager that's got, you know, how you might query FHIR servers by different commands and query strings. Certainly useful if you're new to some of those query strings, but even some of the nuances of wanting to include subsets of resources within a a response back, it's great to have a look at there and see what options are available. Also for understanding, how you might search for a date between within a date range. Smart on FHIR. So if you're using Smart on FHIR, definitely have a look at that link around how we utilize Smart on FHIR around authentication, authorization, access controls, and some of the smart launching capabilities of a Smart on FHIR app. There's a lot of work that's gone in, certainly in the US, around building and working with Smart on FHIR, and definitely leverage the work that's been done there. Don't try and start from scratch. CDS hooks is a part of the FHIR standard around clinical decision support with use of webhooks. So if you're working in the space around clinical decision support and you're needing to interact with it in a hooks-based manner, definitely have a look at that part of the specification. It's a really interesting way of dealing with the challenge of clinical decision support. I mentioned the FHIR validator in the sort of tools, and it's one of the most important tools that you'll find in the list of tools available within FHIR. Being able to validate that your particular FHIR resource is valid from the base profile or from a specific profile that you're trying to adhere to. It will give you all sorts of errors, warnings, exceptions around the data and the terminologies that you're using in your FHIR resource. So certainly when you're in that sort of development and design phase and you've got some sample data structures that you want to validate, and make sure that in implementation it will function as you're expecting, definitely send it through the FHIR validator. It'll take a little time to validate the FHIR resource, maybe 30 seconds, a minute to validate that resource, but you'll get a wealth of information coming back with exactly where the issues are in that data. It stops a lot of the guesswork. You can automate that process. You can run it through, your automated testing tools, your JMeters, etc., to make sure that the content you get back from your FHIR query or your FHIR post is correct before you actually try it in the real world. So like I've said in a number of these videos that I've done, don't be scared of FHIR. It's all of the learning experience of getting to know how FHIR works. There's lots of resources available for you to get started in FHIR, like we talked about in the last video. But there's lots of places where you can go and get some help. So when it's not clear in the FHIR specification on how something should work, it's likely someone else has had the same challenge before and they've asked the question. If they haven't asked the question, go for it. Ask the question, find out how you should be using certain parts of FHIR or how you shouldn't necessarily be using parts of FHIR. And it might be that you've got a particular use case that's brand new, that is something that other people would be interested in knowing about as well. Because all of those questions that you ask and others ask feed into that wealth of knowledge that we can then draw upon. So I really urge you to learn more about FHIR and not be afraid to ask the questions, because it adds to the specification and ultimately the better usage of HL7 FHIR in the wild.